I'd known since the age of 8 or so that I was supposed to be a novelist, but I didn't know how. I mean, nobody does. There aren't any, it's not like becoming a dentist or a CPA. There's no career track for doing this. I went into science. Well, I liked science. I was good at it, but I love teaching. But I knew I was supposed to be a novelist. And when I turned 35, I said to myself, well, you know, Mozart was dead at 36. Maybe you better get a move on here just in case. So I said, okay, on my next birthday, I will begin writing a novel. So what's the easiest possible thing I could write for practice? And I said, well, after some thought, maybe historical fiction. I was a research professor. I knew my way around a library. So I just began writing by myself. But I'd been at it maybe 6 months, and I was working late at night, which is how you work when you have full-time jobs and 3 children. And to break the monotony of what I was doing, I would log into CompuServe every half hour or so, collect my messages, reply. This was 1988. The internet didn't really exist, but we had these online services, as they were called. And so I stumbled into the literary forum while I was doing that. This was a group of people who liked books. There were some published writers, some aspiring writers. Most people were just readers, just people who liked to talk about books. And I found that I was having this intermittent argument with a gentleman about what it feels like to be pregnant. And he said, oh, I know what that's like. My wife has had 3 children. And I said, yeah, Buster, I've had 3 children. And he said, well, can you tell me what it's like? I said, I can, yeah. But it's sort of complex. I don't think I could fit it in a 30-line message slot. So I said, I have this piece that I wrote a few months ago in which a young woman explains to her brother in some detail what it's like to be pregnant. I said, I'll put it in the library here and you can read it. So I did, and everyone who had been following the argument went and read the piece. And they all came rushing back, and they said, well, this is great. What is it? And I said, I don't know. And they said, where's the beginning? And I said, I haven't written that yet. And they said, well, you know, put up some more of it. This is fascinating. I began putting up small chunks whenever I had a scene that would stand without a lot of explanation. People said, well, this is great, you should try and publish it. And I said, I have no idea how to publish it, you know, what should I do? Well, the published writers I knew all said, get a literary agent. So I began researching agents and so forth. And to boil it all down, a gentleman that I knew who was on CompuServe was a client of the agent that I had my eye on. And one day I was talking to John, and he said, you know, I know you're almost ready to look for an agent. You know, would you like me to recommend you to Perry? And I said, that would be great, John. And so I followed that with my own very brief query. It said, Dear Mr. Knowlton, I've been writing and selling nonfiction by myself for several years now, but now that I'm writing a novel, I understand I need good literary representation. Would you be willing to read excerpts from it? I don't want to waste your time. Well, he very kindly called back and said he would. Now, I hadn't told him that I wasn't finished writing it. Excerpts were all I had. But I hastily wrote a 26-page single-spaced synopsis and sent it with my excerpts, and he took me on the basis of an unfinished first novel, which was very lucky then, and it would still be lucky now. It's a rare thing. But 6 months later, I finished the book. He sent it to 5 editors who he thought might like it, and within 4 days, 3 of them had called back with offers to buy it. So he negotiated amongst them for 2 weeks, emerged with a 3-book contract, and bing, I was a novelist. To start with, as I say, I was not telling anyone what I was doing, and that includes my husband. Not because he would have had any objection to my writing a book, but he would have tried to stop me out of fear that I would kill myself, because I did have 2 full-time jobs and 3 children under the age of 6. One evening he came in while I was working, and he said, oh, could I borrow the computer for a minute to print off this document? I said, yeah, sure. Well, up came 80 files called Jamie. This being what I call all of my working files. And anyway, he looked at that, and he looked at me, and he said, who's Jamie? And I said, it's this book I'm writing, all right. Anyway, so he could tell by my tone I was not to be messed with. So he was rather cautious. But after a bit, he overcame his trepidation and would stand behind me, reading off the screen in what he fondly considers to be a Scottish accent. But you know, he could tell that I was handling it all right, and so he didn't read the book until after it came back as what they call a galley, which is like a very cheap paperback that they send out for a review. So I sat down to read it. Halfway through, he said, well, this is a great book. He said, I love it. He said, I can't help noticing, though, that your hero is very tall with red hair. He's 6'4" with red hair. And I said, well, it's true. You're Jamie Fraser's body model from the neck down. And, so anyway, he's always been on board with my writing, and in fact, he is the only person who sees what I'm writing while I'm writing. And the kids, well, they were 6, 4, and 2 when I began working, and so as far as they're concerned, that's just what I've always done. It wasn't any big deal to them. When they got old enough to sort of be interested in it, they are, I think, amused for the most part. None of them reads my books, as my eldest said. I don't want to read sex scenes written by my mother, but which is perfectly reasonable. But their friends read them, so they have a really good idea of what's in the books. And I think they're very proud, that their friends all love the books and now the show. They don't watch the show either for the same reason, but they're very pleased, I think, that it's popular, and they're proud of me. When the show began, the first thing was that Ron and his production partner Merrill came to my house and spent 2 days with me, talking over storylines and backstory and characters and pacing and all this.
The three of us spent a weekend together talking about adaptation, how it would work, and changes in characters and getting backstories. And right from the initial meeting, she was very free and generous with the material. She just said, I have to trust you guys, and I'll just trust you that you'll do the best job you can, and I'll try to help. And it was a very just sort of open, invitation to play with her characters that were very special to her, that she'd spent 20 years, working on.
We turned out to be very much on the same wavelength with regard to how we regarded storytelling and character.
I think Ron's script was the first script that made her sit up, and she was pleased with it.
I said, this is the only thing I've read based on my work that didn't make me turn white or burst into flame when I read it.
We decided to give Diana a script in the second season. We'd actually offered her a script in the first season, but she'd said no.
I said I wouldn't for the first season because I'm not a scriptwriter. I didn't want to risk messing things up in this very vital first season.
She seems to enjoy what we've done so far, and she's been on board. She's writing a script for season 2.
He said, well, it's going to be either this one or this one. I haven't quite made up my mind. And then eventually he chose 11 for me, which was good choosing on his part. 11 runs very close to the actual plot flow of the book, so I didn't have to do violence to my own sense of, what's appropriate when writing it.
Gaelic? Do you speak that barbarous tongue?
We both know that messages are frequently intercepted. If you don't trust me, I'm certainly happy to write it in English and just hope that your messenger boy doesn't get caught.
You wound me, madam.
She flew out to California, came into the writer's room with us. We broke the story with her together. She went off, she wrote her outline, she did a great job. I mean, especially for a writer who's never done this, she just picked it up.
I put in a few things that we had not discussed and so forth, some of which flew, and some of them I said, well, we can't do that because we want to use it over here, or we can't do that because it's too expensive to film, that sort of thing. And so notes like that came back, so I redid it. The second outline was fine. They said, yeah, go to script.
She turned in a really solid first draft of the script, and then she started going through the rewrites.
And then it passed to Anne, who is the executive producer on this block. At that point, the script became her responsibility, and while I still have input in it, it's her that has to interface with the director about it and with Ron. And if there are things, she's allowed to change things, and she did. She streamlined it beautifully. She did a really nice job. I read through her revision, and I said, this is great. It works really, really nice.
Then she came to Scotland to sort of be here on the ground while the episode was being prepped and filmed.
I wanted to go because I really, really wanted to see what it was like to film. A totally fascinating experience, and I'm really thrilled that I did it, but it was really grueling. We were standing outdoors for 12 to 14 hours a day in the freezing cold and the rain, wearing 6 layers. It was deeply interesting, though. Deeply enlightening as well, because it's at this point that you suddenly realize why writers are considered low man on the production totem pole. It is because the script is the only thing that can be changed without a lot of hassle and expense. It exists only in the writer's mind. With my scene, luckily, it was just small changes. One day, Sam Hewen came to me at the beginning of filming, and he said, this speech here, we've just blocked it, and I need to walk from one end of a table to the other end while I'm saying this. And the speech is too long. I'll get to the other end before I finish saying this, and it won't work when I have to turn around. He said, can I take off the first 2 sentences? And I looked at it, and I said, no, we need the first 2 sentences because of this, that. I said, but we can take out the one after that, and I can rejigger the last one so that it's much shorter. Will that work? And we tried it, and it did work.
We'll make our way there. Fetch you back.
Every once in a while, she'll weigh in on scripts, weigh in on a cut, ask us to add a line, or that maybe we've forgotten, but we so appreciate everything she gives us, and she's been so supportive.
She's very connected to the fans, and she's protective of them and what they feel is special of the book, and she's always trying to give us insight into where are the pieces that matter to the fans.
We will find each other. Trust in that.
She's a good guidepost for all of us, but I think she's very connected and very, very proud of the show.
You know, I'm thrilled that people like the story in this form, but I'm also thrilled for the actors and writers and directors who have done such a wonderful job.